Hello everybody, thank you for joining me once again. We're up to fertility session number 4 today, and we're talking about probably one of the most important aspects of my job when I'm dealing with women and fertility issues. Hello, more people are coming. Ways to reduce stress when you're trying to conceive, because they do have a very strong correlation. So tonight I do spend a lot of time in my clinic talking about ways that can increase your feeling of well-being, your feeling of contentment. It goes a little bit deeper than just trying to reduce stress, but obviously everything that I try and teach and guide women with and couples when they're trying to conceive, come down to just keeping them in the best possible emotional state. So I'm diving in quite deep tonight, so bear with me. We've got quite a lot of information to go through. So for those of you that are joining me for the first time tonight, this is Fertility Fitness session number 4. And it's about the emotional health of when you're trying to conceive and the best way to reduce the stress that you're going through, and just some tips and tricks on how to increase your general well-being when you're going through it. Welcome. So if you wouldn't mind just giving me a hello or a heart or a emoji of any sort that you like, just to let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. And when you ask questions, I'll do my very best to answer them when I'm online, but if not, I'll get back to you afterwards in the comments. So the more comments and questions, the better. So please hit me with it. As I said, this is one of my favorite topics, and I do feel like I spend a lot of time talking about emotional health and ways to increase your well-being during the time of conceiving, but also if you're just going through some gynecological issues, they can all be very challenging. So fertility, as you would know, is one of the hardest things emotionally to go through. So having fertility issues can really rock your soul and really make you question about your purpose and your sort of sense of why you're here. And I think this is the problem that we have when girls are being told that they may have trouble to conceive, is that it rocks their whole innate desire to become a parent. And we do tend to assume that it's something that we've earned and it's something that everybody can have. But of course, with statistics being 1 in 6 couples considered infertile, which is 12 months of either not being able to fall pregnant or stay pregnant, then it's not becoming a reality for a lot of people. So despite the fact that we think that when we're young that we will have no troubles, obviously for a lot of us this is not the case. All right, so I'm going to go through today about what the stress centers in the body are and understanding them, because with knowledge comes power, and with power and knowledge comes certainty and some level of control. Because a lot of people, when they first come to see us, talk about, when I ask how they're going, how's their mood, how's their emotions, and I'm very interested to really know, and I really do try and listen to their response. I find that quite often they're very fearful. That seems to be one of the biggest emotions, and they also feel extreme lack of control. And I think if you can find some strategies to give you back some control, quite often that comes with knowledge. So that's really what I want to impart with you tonight. I just want to educate you and give you some knowledge about how the brain works, how our mind works, and maybe for anyone that's a psychologist out there, welcome. If you want to give me some hints later, that's totally fine. I don't come to you as a psychologist. I come to you as Petra Joly, women's health specialist, been working with women in the fertility field for, as I said earlier, 17 years. So I feel like I've spoken to literally thousands and thousands of people trying to conceive in that time, and have heard what they're saying. And I've done a lot of research myself into what I can tell them to help them get through this phase of their life. And it's a very scary phase, and that's why fear. If any of you that are watching me now, if you feel open to it, tell me, what's your strongest emotion if you're trying to conceive at the moment, or if you're in fact going through assisted reproduction, which has a whole nother layer on it as well. I think you'll agree it's that sort of, most people will say fear to me, and a lot will just say, you know, flat, sad, worried. You know, there's so many different elements, and some, you know, obviously stressed is a word that comes up as well. So I hope I can help you a little bit tonight. I don't have oodles of time, but I will do my very best to hopefully help you feel like you've got a little bit of control going forward. All right, so I have made some notes. If I'm looking down, that's all I'm doing, is making sure I'm staying on track a little bit, because I am so passionate about this topic, and I feel like it has such a strong correlation with success when we come to fertility. So does infertility, which I don't really like, but fertility issues cause stress? Of course. And does stress cause infertility or fertility issues? It's the chicken and the egg. You know, if it's not hard enough already, you're also kind of copying some, you know, people saying, oh, well, you just need to relax. You know, isn't that just the worst? Has anyone been told that? Just need to relax. You just need to go on a holiday. That's obviously not helpful at all, because I'm sure everybody that was having fertility issues, that if they just relaxed or went on a holiday, that doesn't mean it's going to work. Quite often there's physiological issues and so much more to it. And certainly being told that is only going to add to your stress. All right? So that's obviously not helpful, but that comes into my tips later about, you know, making sure people know their boundaries and what's okay and what's not okay when it comes to conversations. All right, so the brain, this is how it works, all right? So this was something I talked a lot about last year, I think it was, or the year before. So our brains have not actually developed a lot. So as you would know, our everyday lives have changed dramatically over the last probably 15, 20 years. You know, we've got mobile phones now, we've got email obviously now. We're very contactable now, particularly at the moment when a lot of people are working from home. It's this digital world, and it's very fast, and we've got TV and we've got Netflix and we've got, you know, everything's kind of firing all the time. So it's a very busy life that's out around us. It doesn't, you know, even if in our own homes we try and control it a bit, it's still, you know, busy, and we're very contactable. Our brains, however, have not changed. So our brains still want us and are kind of made to function that we are, and this is a little bit simplified, but if I can just bring it down, you know, if you imagine, you know, in cave dwelling relatives, you know, they're sitting around campfires, they're sharing stories, they're helping with cooking, and, you know, and then there's a few people that are keeping an eye out on the outside to make, you know, keeping everybody safe and looking for danger. So that's kind of what our brain wants us to be like. It doesn't want us to be switched on and alert all the time like we are at the moment. So what happens is when our stress hormones, so our adrenaline and our cortisol, are high for such long lengths of time as they sort of are these days, it affects, so the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the adrenal system work together. So they're the ones that release our hormones to make us be able to react and respond, all right? So they're our fight or flight response, which you would have heard about. Interestingly enough, our hypothalamus and our pituitary also regulate our ovaries. Isn't that interesting? And for men, at the gonads. So our reproduction is very closely linked with our stress centers in the body. So if we want our ovaries and our gonads to function optimally, we've got to make sure that we're not overusing that axis. So the axis being the 3 points of the hypothalamus, the pituitary. It's saying that I'm sideways. Is that right? Am I sideways to other people as well? That's interesting. I'm not sure if it's just your screen. If anybody else could let me know, that would be great, because I obviously don't want to be sideways, and this is how I thought I had it last time. Let me just check. How am I now? Has that made any difference? Anyway, I'm going to keep going, so hopefully it's okay. Oh yes, I've got a thumbs up. So sorry for anybody that I was sideways for. That was obviously not my intention. All right, so as cortisol and adrenaline go up, unfortunately, the effect, our ovaries don't function so well. All right, so we don't want to be overstimulated. We want to make sure we keep everything as calm as we can. And the ways we do that is what I'm going to talk about now. So interestingly, we have an alarm bell in our brains, all right? So does anybody know what our... Oh, I am still sideways. Oh, all right, let me just... Is that better? If I just keep it down here? I'll just lean it on my laptop. You can still hear me, so that's good. What about now? Thank you for letting me know. That's obviously really good. All right, I'm going to, hopefully that is okay. Yeah, so we want to make sure that, there's an alarm bell in our brain. And if anyone knows, I actually call it Amy. So if anybody's very clever and knows the brain and how it works, let me know. So it's actually called the amygdala, which I love that word. And I call her Amy. She is in men and women. But Amy is there to kind of be, you know how I was talking about the person that sits around the campfire and keeps an eye out and keeps an ear out? They're the ones that are really hyper-vigilant and making sure everybody is safe, all right? Now, interestingly enough, this might interest you, it might not, but in women, guess what? Our amygdala is actually 30% larger than men. So, you know, when we're sort of, you know, they say, oh, don't worry about it, we'll just relax, you know. It's because we're wired to worry. As women, we're supposed to be the worriers. We're supposed to be the ones that are out there protecting everybody and each other and our children and, you know, all that sort of thing. So please don't ever feel like there's something wrong with you if you're a worrier, all right? Because we are wired, as women, we are particularly wired to worry. Men still do it. And when women are worrying, we tend to do it internally. So our worry tends to go into, you know, self-doubt, a little bit of negative bias, you know, and we tend to internalize it, and quite often it can present as sadness or depression. Whereas men, when they're sort of worrying and their amygdala is kind of working overtime, they tend to externalize it. Now, obviously, I'm not a psychologist, so this is just general information. But men tend to externalize it, which means that can present as anger and frustration and physicality. Isn't that interesting? I find that very interesting, and I find that very true in my clinic as well. When women, you know, they tend to take it in. It's quite personal, and they take it, you know, into their heart. Now, I've got a bit of a test for you. Who's a movie buff out there? There is a line in a movie which I think you might find interesting. Well, this is a segue to the next little part of it, and the line says, "The bad stuff is easier to believe." You ever notice that? Does anyone know which very famous movie that's from? And it's got, I think, what's his name? Richard Gere in it. And Julia Roberts actually said it. Pretty Woman, yes. So it was the character of Vivian that Julia Roberts played in Pretty Woman. And I just find that so interesting because it's so true. We have a negative bias. It's like why the bad stuff sticks almost, you know, and I think, you know, what we've got to try and do is find ways to get rid of that bad stuff, get rid of that negative talk, particularly when it comes to fertility, all right, and just for our general well-being, really. Like, we all want to be content. I don't like to use the word happy because happy is a word that doesn't really say anything. There's no density to the word. You really want to be content. You want to be happy in your own skin. You want to be happy with the decisions you're making. You want to be happy with, you know, content with all those things. I just said happy. All right. So we inherited genes that predisposed us to give special attention to negative impacts on our environment, you know, negative impacts around us. So again, it's that sort of what could be going on around us that's going to affect us negatively, and that's when we start to kind of look for everything and that has a negative connotation. So we're looking for things that could be harmful to us, and that is how our brain works. So what we've got to do is work around it. We've got to find ways to work around how our actual brain is working, because there's no way of changing it. All right? We are wired that way. All right. So let's get started. I just wanted to actually touch on it. So one of the biggest, I said earlier, one of the biggest emotions we have when we're having trouble conceiving, and I know a few people that have just clocked on, I know they would understand this and be hearing it. My reason for actually starting the clinic all those years ago was I had this really deep, innate fear that I would have trouble conceiving. I had absolutely no basis for that fear. It was a perceived threat. So my amygdala, or Amy as I call her, was firing, kind of going, what if this could happen? So it was making me kind of worry when I really had no reason even to worry. I had no knowledge about the worrying. So my alarm bells were ringing, and it kind of then when I did start trying to conceive, and I did get around it. I did a lot of proactive work. I had a miscarriage, but then I basically grabbed all the knowledge I could and got knowledge from other people so that I could deal with that fear and turn it around into a positive, and sort of saying, well, I can't do this at the moment, but I will later. What else can I add to the mix to make sure that I can stay mentally well and emotionally well during this whole process? But it was actually the driving force to me creating the clinic when I finished, because I knew there was other people out there that needed a safe place to come, somewhere to tell me their dreams, their wishes, their fears, everything. So that's really the basis of my clinic, and why I do what I do is because of this perceived threat that I might not be able to conceive one day. So I want to give you these skills because I think it's really important to have these. So we want you to feel in control. We want you to feel confident. And I really want you to feel some certainty around your health, well-being, and your fertility and your ability to conceive. All right? There are no promises, obviously, but there are certainly things you can do to make sure that you are giving yourself the best shot in the best possible emotional state. All right? Because you don't want the amygdala, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal. You don't want the adrenal system affecting your ovary system, basically. All right? So we've got to keep that stress down as much as we can. And this is what we're here for tonight. So how do we gain these things? How do we get control, confidence, and certainty? All right? So the biggest thing, and this is what I've already touched on, is knowledge. It's just finding out information and putting it into place. All right? So some of the stuff I'm going to suggest to you tonight, it's a bit hard. You have to look internally. You need to reach out. You need to ask for help. There's lots of things that you will need to do in order to get the best out of your I suppose, time and what you get out of this tonight as well. So there's a system of thinking. It's from the positive psychology framework, and it's called PERMAH. And the guy that I think created it was Professor Martin Seligman. And Seligman. And he's a leading researcher in positive psychology, and I love positive psychology and wellbeing science. And kudos to my beautiful friend Andrea from Project Thrive, who does some amazing work in the education system, using this particular framework, as well as lots of others. But PERMAH, has anyone heard of PERMAH? It's an acronym, PERMAH. They've only not recently, but H was added later. Let me tell you what it stands for, and then we'll go through that, because I think that's a really important thing. So so this is kind of big picture well-being, and then I'm going to give some specific advice for if you're in the midst of assisted reproduction or fertility assistance. All right. So P is for positive emotion, and it just sounds like a term when you say it like that, but it's about how do you increase your positive emotion. It's a bit like the growth mindset, really. So it's being mindful of your words. You know, instead of saying I can't, you might say I can't yet. Like adding on that yet gives you some space and it gives you some time to do it. You do need to give yourself time to do these things. So positive emotion is just really, you know, your mindset, I guess. And it's also, you know, because you know how we've got that natural tendency to a negative bias that I was talking about earlier? It's the same sort of thing. You know, you want to turn that around, all right? You want this to work in your favor, not the other way around. So there's one little technique that can really help you increase your positive emotions, and that would be, I call it the WWWW. So every night you can just write down what went well today and why. All right, don't forget the why, because if we know the why it went well, we can keep repeating that good behavior. All right, and that's going to increase your positive emotions. So, you know, your joy or your love or your compassion or your, you know, laughter or whatever it may be. So if something went well during the day, write it down and why. All right, so it's really important to do the why on that little journal. Now, E in PERMAH is for engagement. And that's, you know, connecting with each other. But engagement is like really being in the moment with something. You know, like if you are, just say you're singing and you get, time just flies. You know, you absolutely love it. And it becomes, you are sort of right in the moment, you know, present. You know how they talk about being present? So tell me, anybody that's watching tonight, tell me what makes your flow, like what makes you time stand still. You don't realize how much time flies. Some people it might be dancing, some people it might be swimming, some people it might be riding a horse. So mine was actually riding a horse. I used to love riding horses, and that was like my absolute relaxation, time out. I loved my horse. I loved being outdoors. I loved the people I rode with, and it was just the most precious time. So have a think about engagement. So it's not just doing things for yourself. It could also be helping others. You know, that's a really engaging thing to do. You know, some people work in soup kitchens, or some people, I don't know, just go and help their parents cook, something like that. And time can fly because you're in the flow. That's really what it is, in the moment, being present in the moment, which is what mindfulness is all about, really. Isn't it? It's like, you know, not thinking forward or back. You're just in the present. R is for relationships. So we all need, for strong, positive relationships, we all need to feel seen, heard, and valued. All right? So it's about making sure that we have connections that bring that value to us, but also you bring that value to them. So I want you to have a think about your relationships and ask yourself, am I being heard and am I listening? I think that's really important because it's a two-way street. Relationships, obviously, as you would know, and it's not necessarily relationships to your loved ones. It could be work colleagues. It could be, you know, anybody. It could be your kids' parents, your kids' friends' parents is what I'm trying to say. So relationships are really important to your well-being, all right? So these are the 6 ways to create the best general well-being, all right? To bring us contentment and fulfillment, I guess is the word as well. So positive emotion, engagement, relationships. So make sure you do a hygiene check on that one. You know, am I listening to somebody else, and am I being heard in return? All right. And then M is for meaning and purpose. So there's two frames of thinking, the eudaimonia and hedomonia. So eudaimonia is the, let's start with hedonia or hedomonia. And that's very much pleasure-seeking behavior. So you want instant gratification. You know, you buy a dress because you like the look of it and you want to wear it, and that's that. All right. Whereas eudaimonia is sort of an exercise of moral virtue. So it's long-standing. It comes from within. So it might be, you know, working towards something, like building something with somebody else. Like it's this sense of achievement that goes alongside it, but you're doing it for good moral reasons, all right? So it's that sense of kind of giving back, but it's also, you know, working almost as a team in order to do that. So it's about moral virtue. It's about the happiness or contentment from within rather than seeking it externally. All right, so that's meaning and purpose. The A is for accomplishment, which I just touched on a little bit, but that's accomplishment as in, you know, it could be learning or education. It could be in creating a team and working as a team accomplishment, or being, you know, part of a sporting team even, or part of a family, you know, making sure the accomplishment that comes from within, like working together or working individually. So it gives you that sense of achievement and fulfillment. And if you achieve something that's been really hard to get and you do it as a team together, can you imagine how good that feels? I'm sure some of you would have already done that. You know, if you've really worked towards something and got it and you've done it all together, it gives you that real mateship, that real connection or bond. I know when I was younger and I used to travel a lot, and you know, you'd do some crazy ass stuff, excuse my language, you know, but then, you know, like something like my girlfriend and I backpacked, which is crazy, and hitchhiked right through South Africa. And it was scary, it was crazy, it was a really challenging experience and pushed us both to the edge of our boundaries. But it was such a strong bonding time for us because we got through it, we did it, and it really connected us forever. We will always be friends because of it. And that's A for accomplishment. And then H is health. So that's really what I've been talking about throughout these whole sessions. So, you know, eating well, sleeping deeply, moving regularly, daily mindfulness. And, you know, the daily mindfulness, as I keep saying to you, does not have to be meditation. It could be just walking around your garden with your shoes off, feeling what you feel with your feet. It could be doing something even in a group, like, you know, singing together, or, you know, something where it makes you very present. That's really what mindfulness is about. You're not thinking of the future or thinking about the past, because you can't change them. One hasn't been yet and one has already been. So, you know, this is just staying right where you need to be, right where you are at the moment. The other thing is, you know, calming, ways to calm the central nervous system. You know, I was talking about the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal system, ways to calm that down so that everything else, you know, all your other systems can work well, like especially your reproductive system. So acupuncture has a very strong effect on the central nervous system. It's able to help regulate that system between the HPA and the HPO that I mentioned earlier on. Sorry, I'm a bit of a science nerd as well. I just love this stuff. So making sure that these axes are working well. So acupuncture is fantastic for it, and that's why you get that feeling of sort of zen, I suppose, after a treatment. The other thing would be massage is a good way to do it. Herbs are a really good way, and also supplements as well. So there's lots of things you can do under the health umbrella in order to help you cope and deal with fertility issues, all right? Or just general health, you know. It doesn't have to be. So this is kind of big picture well-being assistance. So it's called PERMAH, PERMAH, all right? It gives you a big picture of what could give you very strong contentment in your life. And even if you just work on a little bit, and I'll be doing posts every day as of tomorrow about breaking them up. So I'm going to do 3 days of P, which is positive emotion. I'm going to do 3 days of engagement, tips for that. I'm going to do 3 days of relationships. I'm going to do 3 days of meaning and purpose, and I'm going to do 3 days of accomplishment and 3 days of health. But the health I do all the time anyway, so it really, you know, just 3 set days and then every other day that I do it. And then I promised you that I would give you some tips for if you are in the midst of assisted reproduction. So it could be an IUI, AI, OI, IVF, lots of acronyms in or ART, assisted reproduction technology. So it can be a particularly scary time and very clinical, and you can feel like one of many, and sometimes you may not feel heard. So that's a whole nother issue, and if you need us, you know where we are. We're back in clinic now, or I can see you online if you prefer to stay home. So would love to help be part of your world. Right, so it is possible to relieve some of the stress and pressure when it comes to ART. So, number one, accept that you are experiencing a time of heightened stress. I think that goes without saying. Don't try to downplay or deny its effects. It's a big deal, all right? No one wants to be doing assisted reproduction. It is not usually a chosen way of reproducing, all right? It's quite clinical, as I said, quite cold, and it can leave you feeling quite isolated. All right, and loneliness is just the pits. All right. Number two, don't suffer alone. All right, I know it's hard because sometimes you feel like you're the only one going through it, but confide in a trusted friend, loved ones, support groups, social support networks. They can really help reduce the feelings of stress because you feel like you're a part of it. Many fertility clinics offer some support networks as well. You know, some counselling tends to be part of it. So make sure you use that, all right? I don't know how many sessions, like each one's different. Some include sessions, some you pay extra. If you can afford it, I would take them up on, you know, at least weekly during the process, all right? I think it's good to have somebody that really understands the process and they can put some of your fears at rest and make you feel heard, seen and valued, all right? So they're really important. You can join online groups as well. There's quite often Facebook groups if you find that helpful. Not everybody does find that helpful because quite often, depending on what groups they are, sometimes the people telling the stories have the biggest stories to tell, but they're not telling your story. So the thing with reproduction is that you are an individual and what you're doing and what you need to do can be very different to somebody else, even though your symptoms may look similar. Your treatment protocol, everything could be completely different. So just remember that some of the information in online groups, you know, just the ones telling the biggest stories, quite often are extreme, and it's not your story. So just be mindful of that. But there are some really good ones out there. So do some research. All right, talk to your IVF doctor, talk to your acupuncturist, talk to people that you're seeing and see if they can recommend some local groups for you to join that, you know, are helpful. All right, and if you don't find them helpful, just don't continue with it. Just finish your subscription and don't keep logging into it. Empower yourself with the knowledge. Again, we keep coming back to knowledge because knowledge gives you control. And control is really what we want when we come down to it. That's what's going to help us feel more relaxed, is knowing what's going on, how it's going on, when it's going on, what's actually going to be happening, all right? So who, what, why, when, where stands when it comes to these sort of procedures, or even if you're trying something else new, just make sure you know all the facts if that's, you know, what you like to know, all right? Not everybody does. Some people like to just be completely oblivious and just, you know, go with a friend's recommendation. That's fine as well. Go with what feels right for you. So find out as much as you can. Use the web. Use reputable sources though, all right? And of course, lean on the people that you already know that have done it. And there's some really good books out there as well, resources in that way as well. Decide in advance with whom you are going to share your experience with. All right, that's always a good one as well, because you need to plan some strategies for avoiding inappropriate questions if you can. There's probably only so much, again, you can control. You don't really want unwanted advice from colleagues and acquaintances. You know, you don't necessarily respect their opinion. So you've got to really, what I suggest to people is to, instead of saying, what do you think I should do? I would always say, what did you do in this situation? All right. So then they don't feel like you are, that means you're only asking people that actually would know. You actually then, they don't feel the pressure just to give you some answer to try and fix you, because you don't want to be fixed. You just want to know What did you do? And then you can gather everybody's information and make some knowledgeable decisions based on that. All right. And I always suggest that with, with all situations. All right. Just don't ask for advice for yourself, because only you can sort of make those decisions, but just ask people what they did. And obviously people who you respect their opinion and respect how they live their lives. And, if need to, discuss the possibility of treatment breaks with your doctor or your healthcare providers, because sometimes even just having a month off the medication can just let the light come back in for a little bit. The body's working really hard when it's taking high-level synthetic hormones. So even if you just take a month, 2 months off, and I know sometimes time is not on your side, and that's not an option, and that's okay as well. But if you feel like that's something that you can do, have a chat to your doctor about it and just organise it. They're always happy to let you do that. I can't imagine why they wouldn't anyway. And I guess lastly, number 7, know it's common for women and men in the midst of treatment to experience feelings of sadness, depression, fear, loneliness, isolation. They are all normal feelings. Just feel the feels and then do what you can to turn them around. Do as much as you can, exercising, as I said, getting to bed at the right time, eating well. That will give you the control. You can control that part of it. All right? And that will help lift you out. Obviously, if the mood doesn't lift, then you'll need to go and seek some help and go and see a specialist, or go and see your GP, or put your hand up or put your hand out and let people know that you need some help, because you could have your down days, but they shouldn't be lasting too long. You should be able to get back up out of them and move on through your day. So I hope those tips were helpful. There is so much. I just had to pick out some ways. So basically just know the way the brain works. We are wired to worry. We are going to worry. Fertility issues is one of the hardest things to deal with. It's up there with, terminal cancer when it's, stress score. So just it's going to be hard. There's no doubt about it. So get your people around you. Get your things in place that you can work on, and know that I am always around for you as well. And there's plenty of fantastic psychologists out there as well to help with the deeper work. And I'll be here next week. Next week is talking about movement and activity and how that works and how that increases your fertility and your well-being. So I hope you've all enjoyed it tonight. Thank you very much. It's a very important topic, and I think we need to talk about our emotions as much as we can. And, it was interesting today, I was listening to a podcast about hope, and they were talking about how hope is like a muscle and you need to work on it. So I wish you all the very best, and I hope all of you can conceive with no problems at all. All right, take care, everybody. Have a good night. Bye.